Alright, I am back with a new Path of Exile 2 video, which may end up being my last one for a while, which is unfortunate. I don't really want to make this video. I know it will probably get me yelled at a certain amount by existing fans, calling me a tourist or whatever. I'm a new player. I'm a new player to Path of Exile, so I can only give my take, but this is based on an article I wrote today about Path of Exile 2's endgame. And that was sort of a reaction to my own experience and then a video I watched from Kriparian, who is a great YouTuber. I watched so much of his stuff during Diablo, and he's great. And he really articulates the issues that I'm having and made me feel like I'm not really alone. And the end result is like, I got to stop playing this for the time being. Where I am currently at in the game, it does not seem like there's a reasonable path forward to continue. Again, this is early access. I will fully acknowledge that, and clearly it is an early access for a reason, because this endgame is not it for, I would say, the vast majority of players. I also think I have probably played more than a lot of, quote unquote average players. Not as much as, the 14, 15 hour a day grinding streamer guys, but probably more than a lot of people who have just been kind of, playing the early access when they have a free moment or two. This is my job, so I have had a lot more time. I've gone through the campaign 2 times, once on normal, once on cruel difficulty, which is ironic because cruel is much easier because your build is really ramped up by that point, where at lower levels, it can be really challenging. Crip talks about how Act 2 was like the hardest the game was for him because you can be so underpowered at that point, especially melee, that you can't really do anything about it because you can't really farm up in a traditional sense in an act, because that's just not really how it's structured. So you are a little bit stuck until you figure out some of these fights. It was challenging. It was definitely, there were challenging aspects to it, especially in normal, and I'm okay with that. I do not need to be a Diablo 4 steamroller of just, blowing up entire screens of guys and just not really feeling any challenge, even at kind of the hardest difficulties. It's fun, certainly, but I appreciated Path of Exile's more kind of methodical pace. The bosses, which, maybe not fully Dark Souls, but that kind of idea where you learn their attack patterns, trial and error, all this stuff. So by the end, I was cruising. I think I beat all of the act bosses in anywhere from 1 to 3 tries with my Ranger build. And I was excited to get to the end game because, there's a ghost. Evie. She came. I felt my build was like, okay, I'm going to keep powering it up. I'm going to keep leveling up. And this end game looks really interesting. It's like this big map. You got all these different nodes. You plug in waystones for like different levels of challenge and things. And that sounded pretty cool to me. It seemed like a really interesting setup. There's a whole new skill tree for it. And I'm like, all right, let's take it on. This is nothing like the game that came before it. The main issues here are that all of these dungeons are now, or these maps are now, one death over. You have 1 life, and if you die for any reason, you're out of the map. And not only you're out of the map, you can also no longer go back to that same map because it eats your waypoint token. So you have to go grind out a new waypoint token, usually on a lower level, depending on how many of these you have, and then get back up to that tier, and then hope you don't die again. 1 death per level, especially at like the base levels of these, seems overly punishing. That is certainly not how the normal game worked in any capacity. Dying was like not the greatest because it would set you pretty far back on the map, and not only would you have to trek all the way back, but they would respawn all the enemies. It wasn't, it was kind of annoying, but it was fine. And then all the bosses, they were hard, but they would at least spawn you right outside again. Again, a lot of boss fights are trial and error, learning their moves, figuring out how to beat them. And unless you were just so powerful, you would tank a boss, one-shot a boss, whatever, really easily. They're certainly all about trial and error. The young game is not like this all. And the problem with the 1 death thing is, okay, maybe I could, that's a challenge and it's not ideal, but you just play really carefully. Yes, but that only works to a point. And, you will find at certain points in the game, kind of no matter what your build is, depending on where you are in the game, that it is possible to get one shot. And then the further you go, it almost becomes more possible because of enemy damage scaling. And that's certainly true on a ranger, which, relies on kind of dice roll evasion to get around stuff. And obviously on melee, you're getting hit a lot more. So not only are you losing a map, but like any rogue hit from any big enemy can theoretically kill you. And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't great, and I don't really love how this is going, but is this just the beginning? Like, am I just not strong enough to be taking this on, even if I am kind of at the lower ranks? And like, yeah, I was beating some of the lower maps and stuff, but then you'd take a one hit and then lose your stone, and now I'm out of stones and trying to figure out what to do. And then I watched the crypt video, and the crypt video kind of laid everything out. It is the video that just straight up made me like, yeah, I'm out. Okay, like this is not something I want to play. The issue there is like, the long and short is it doesn't get any better from here. It gets worse. And what Crip explains is that the further you get into this, the deaths get more and more punishing. So everything is, one death, you're out of the map. But you get further in, you start losing XP, and Lord knows how hard it is to gain XP at higher levels already. So you'll lose some percentage of your XP if you die. You will not only lose your higher tier waystone, but in some of these places you will lose all of the connecting points to like where you just got to. So you'll have to replay those maps to get all the way back up to what you need. And in those lower maps, according to him, like you're not farming anything remotely at all that you need. So you could do that for an hour, get all the way there, die again, go back. You've lost XP. So like you can actually be behind where you started at that tier. And like as annoying as it is to have to start a map over and lose your waystone, that sounds infinitely more annoying the higher you get. The second thing he verifies is that this one-shotting thing is not going to stop. Like, not really in any build. He's talking about how, like, you have to build for, like, 3,000 HP, like, all the armor you can, max resistance, all of the stuff. And even then, you can still get one-shot or at least killed in very cheap ways. And he talks about floor effects that you can barely even see that kill you, or enemy attacks that are not telegraphed, or elite modifiers that you have to like fully understand as they're running towards you that you can't avoid, because there are no movement skills in this game. And he talks about how the entire game essentially is based around dodge rolls and not screwing up dodge rolls, because if you are in a situation where you can get one hit, the only way you can always avoid that theoretically is hitting every dodge roll perfectly. And obviously I know there are like these highest tier guys who are like have the best builds in the world and are like crazy APM dodge roll folks, but like Crip is a top tier player, and if he's saying this, and I've seen other top players saying this too, like what hope do any of us have? And it's enough to just sort of make me stop playing. I don't see a reason to keep going here if it's not really even about getting stronger, if it's not like I just am, not skilled enough or whatever, because I don't hit every single dodge roll in every single map. Like that to me is nothing like what I've played so far. And I feel like I've heard some people pushing back on this. Asmongold made a video about Crip's video. Of course, I guess I'm doing that here, but I'm not playing Crip's video. Where he's like, oh, like it's not that hard. Like he's complaining too much. And like both Asmongold switched off of a warrior because it was too hard and switched to something else. And also, like, a lot of the people complaining are not in the end game. They might be on cruel difficulty or something like, well, I'm on cruel difficulty and this game isn't hard at all. It's like, yeah, that's true. Cruel difficulty was not very hard. But you get into the end game, you play an hour of that and figure out like how this is going and how this is going to work. I think you will probably end up being where I'm at. And the thing is like, I don't want to abandon this game. Like I really enjoy Path of Exile. I had a great time with the 50 whatever hours I put in it to beat both stages of the campaign. I'm just so disappointed that the end result of this is essentially like a non-functional end game where it doesn't seem remotely worth trying to play it, especially solo. I would love for stuff to be overhauled to the point where it actually feels rewarding for the pretty decent. If I'm steamrolling everything on cruel, I'd at least like to participate in the end game in a more meaningful extent than like just the base lower tier ones, and even those, if you step the wrong way, you can lose. and there's nothing, you can really do about your build to fully change that, according to, other people. Um, I can imagine maybe this will be fixed and overhauled over time. I looked at what they're changing in the end game, and it was just like, we're adding more rare packs so you can finish maps faster or something like that. And like, they didn't address anything about difficulty or whatever. And like, to be clear, I'm not anti-difficulty. There were very, very challenging parts in this game, in the early campaign, especially when you don't have the build, that a lot of trial and error, really, kind of frustrating stuff, but you overcome, you change your strategies, whatever. But if in the campaign, if I died to a boss and it kept sending me back to the previous map every single death, I would be like, screw this, I'm out of here. But that's essentially what the end game is. I don't know how much it'll change. It, like, the one death map thing seems kind of baked into the mode. So maybe at best they nerf enemy damage to be more reasonable, so you're just not always getting one shot. One thing that actually does scale pretty well is enemy health. Like, my build was actually doing still really good damage to these higher level enemies. I thought that was a really good aspect of it. But if you're just going to be one shot with every attack you can't dodge roll out of, or like fighting a boss where you don't know the mechanics and the first attack kills you, like what are you supposed to do about that? And the analogy I like that I put in my article is like, it's like an Elden Ring, a very challenging game that people love and like overcoming the challenge. If you fought Millennia for the first time and died and it reset, it took all of your runes and it erased all sites of grace on that part of the map. Like that is the equivalent of this here, where I think it's great that games can be challenging, but if they just put in things that are irritating and exhausting and progress erasing for its own sake, like, no, I'm not going to deal with that. And that's a literal waste of my time if I can play a significant amount of a game and essentially get nothing for it. Like, at least right now I'm getting some XP, but if I start losing XP, what am I doing at all at that point? So that's why I'm done for now. I would love to come back to this. It's early access. They're going to make big changes to this and that. And there's more campaign to add. I'd love to play more campaign because that was definitely the most fun I had. But I'm curious how everyone else feels about the end game. If you're running into some of the same issues I have, if you are there, or if you're not there yet, check back when you are, and you can see if you agree with me here. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.